New taxation measures are impacting the manufacturing sector. Jimmy, over to you.
Of course, the big conversation around the country is the question of taxation. And of course, this has impacts across all the sectors, from manufacturing to the service industry. And we just want to have that conversation with Akinyi Gikonyo, who is the trade and tax advisor here at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Akinyi, thanks so much for making time to speak to us and to be part of this conversation. So one of the things that I really want you to help us understand, when you look at something like corporate income tax, what is the effect of that in the manufacturing sector?
Okay. When we talk about corporate income tax, what are we talking about? We are talking about tax that is coming out of business. So we've got the payee, which comes out of an individual. We've got the VAT, which is paid on services and goods. And then we've got the profit that is made out by the company. And against that profit, we have the corporate tax. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So in terms of investment decision within the manufacturing sector, when you look at some of these taxes, how has that then shaped the investment that manufacturers are currently making?
Okay, when we look at KM, the manufacturing sector, for example, when we talk about corporate tax, this is our contribution to government out of the business that we do. For us to arrive at a sensible or corporate tax that makes sense, that then contributes to the bigger GDP, we need an enabling environment. And the enabling environment then influences what we are contributing or collecting and putting together to government. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, so the other thing that, of course, I'm sure this is something that you interact with a lot, is the fact that when you look about something like import, and particularly what do import do, that is import tariffs and custom, that is custom duties, have on the cost of raw materials particularly?
Okay, when you look at what is happening in East Africa today, we don't look at ourselves as Kenya. Mm-hmm. We are sitting in a customs union, which means we are looking at Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and DR Congo is coming on board. Since 2005, East Africa has had what we call a common external tariff, mm-hmm. which is a schedule that provides for duty rates that are imposed on goods which are imported into East Africa. Mm-hmm. They are common, so which means that Kenya, Uganda, the countries I have mentioned, all apply the same rate of tax. Mm-hmm. When you look at what has happened right now, is East Africa has nearly derogated the common external tariff, because what we have is stays of application cutting across the board, which means that Kenya will stay application to apply a different rate from Uganda. Uganda will stay application of a particular rate to apply a different rate from the rest of East Africa. And when you sit down to analyze it, then we are asking, do we still have a common external tariff? Mm-hmm. Now, how does this impact on manufacturing? When we look at manufacturing, if you look at the CET, the common external tariff, you find that raw material and input for manufacturing is sitting at either 0%, 10%. And if the same is produced in East Africa, then it will probably be sitting at 25%. Mm-hmm. But when we have a position where Kenya stays to apply the 0%, the 10%, or the 25%, and takes it to 35%, which is the rate where finished goods come in, then we disadvantage the manufacturer in Kenya, because it makes more sense to import the finished product, right, mm-hmm. rather than bring the input to manufacture. Mm-hmm. When we look at these tariff rates, I'll give the example of books, or one of the other items where we have import duty on the raw material or the input, and the finished product is exempt or attracting a lower rate, right? And here I wanted to give the case, I can give the case of, right now the example we have is packaging material, okay? So we have introduced a new tax over and above the 10%, we have introduced a new levy. It's called the Export and Investment Promotion Levy, okay, of 10% on paper, okay?
Yeah.
And we use this paper to manufacture cartons, which are used for export, okay? So right now there's a levy, there's the tax, there's even excise duty, okay? If you look at the cartons when imported for export, they are sitting in an exemption schedule. They can come into the country at 0%. So what is the logic? So this is how sometimes some of these decisions negatively impact on industry, because why would I be importing paper when I have the taxes and the levies to pay when I can import cartons and simply package the goods and take them out of the country?
Yeah. So there's also a concern, and particularly with consumption taxes in the country. And the concern is that the disposable income of Kenyans, of course, is reducing. And this has a net effect to those that are producing some of the goods that Kenyans would have ideally bought. So when you look at the consumption taxes in the country, and in as far as manufacturing sector is concerned, what has been the net effect of these taxes?
Okay, again, the consumption taxes, and I can give the example of excise duty. The consumption tax is actually being imposed on the input to make the finished item. And the minute that we impose it on the raw material, it has a domino effect on the price of the finished product. So what happens is that Kenyans are then not able to afford that which we make here in Kenya. However, the same product will be imported into Kenya, and the same product will not have the element of excise duty, because excise duty was imposed on the input to manufacture the product that is then coming in without excise duty. So the Kenyan product then becomes totally uncompetitive, and the Kenyan consumer will then prefer to buy that one which is landing cheaper because there's no excise element on the input that was used to make the same.
I think that is a good place to hand it over back to the panel there. And of course, there you have it, just looking at some of the taxes that we are implementing in the country and how do they benefit local manufacturers. Back to you.